sound. That's nice. Is everyone seeing? It's mainly on the screen, so it's best to sit quite up front, and it's okay to change now. All right. So thank you for staying here for so late. I know that things are gearing down, and without further ado, I have a fairly lot to talk about over nearly 25 years worth of material. So I need to get rolling. The title is Art of Storytelling, and it's a sort of a retrospective and where Remedy has come along over the years from the early days. And it's briefly still a couple of notes, although I was already presented. So my background is that I'm 45 now, and I started as a teenager in the demo scene, which is a Finnish and Nordic, mostly Nordic, also German pop kind of a underground culture, hacker culture in the 80s, early 90s, if you're not aware. But anyway, before the time of the internet, this was a subculture which basically fueled the whole then Nokia and everything which is related to Finland, because my generation, or at least part of it, hang around together and was learning how to cooperate, how to code, how to do art, and how to do music together, and just do it for free to inspire and to wow the others who were part of that community. My first game was 30 years ago, because I was only 15. So this is my kind of year. I went to do architecture as well, because I thought that that's not going to be, or I need a real work, because something like games can't be that fun. I mean, something that fun can't be a real work, and surely not. Of course, I was always hoping there already was single guys doing like Commodore 64 games, kind of stars, even from Finland, like Stavros Fasolas, or with he has a Greek name, and Jukka Tapanimäki and such guys, but it didn't seem probable, so the only technology and art thing together where user experience is important, it seemed, was architecture. But soon it turned that the hobby, which I had on the side all the time, became my work, and surely by the time of Max Payne that was true. And now Mainframe is I've left Remedy recently, but I'm one of the big owners, and there's no ill will in any way. So, but this is not about Mainframe, this is basically retrospective looking back. This is 1989, I was 15, I apologize. I apologize, especially the purple color, which I hate, but as a kind of a, well, of course you shouldn't hate any color, but the coder had decided the palette, so I had very little left. But anyway, considering that I actually managed to get it in a box and on the shelf of Finnish stores through a publisher was, well, quite okay accomplishment for a 15-year-old, considering there's no internet, no tools, no nothing. So at least we did something. Well, then it took me 12 years of architecture and constantly working on games until the next big project got published, which was called Max Payne 1. But all that time I was learning, I was doing stuff. We matured, we were ambitious. The demo scene people, a lot of people I knew from those days, since whenever we had been teenagers, all of us, we had learned to work together, and we started thinking like, how can we make this fun stuff into a profession? And we seem to know something, and sometimes the stuff we do looks maybe better than a lot of the stuff that's already commercially out there. So I guess we could kind of try it out. And that's where Remedy came along. And architecture for me was also a very, very good foundation because it somehow teaches you the design process and looking at things a little bit more afar. You don't look so much the details, you think more them as the masses and elements where something goes in and something comes out and you don't quite yet know what's that box is. And so it's very important for when game design gets more and more complex, and that already had happened then, and oh boy, it's complex now. So the more you can, in a way, symbolize your thinking and do a lot of the work on that level when it's really cheap, the more you can save money later. And the faster you get. Here's a retrospective of Remedy stuff. A little bit more. So that's about 20 years prior to these recent days, and it's missing bits from Control, which is the latest game, but more about that bit later. So it's, by the way, the opening shot feels very nostalgic because there was, you may have seen the skyscraper. So with my background in architecture, I was doing 3-4 Max Payne levels in total, and one of the, I usually worked on the architecturally challenging ones. For example, that skyscraper level was entirely my work. And then while doing it, I constantly was thinking how to do cinematics then later, and towards the end of the production, we had very limited tools, but I tried to be very, very inventive with the camera. Because we didn't have facial animation, we had really poor animation. But of course, this is 2001, so considering the time and era, it was already far more cinematic than almost anything out there. And I think, you know, the limitation of not having that for example, there was one shot towards the end where a radio mast collapses, and when I was working on the level, I kept looking down the 600 meter, yes, it was 600 meter tall skyscraper, and thought that this looks really awesome and I need to use it later. And then when it actually starts moving, I attached the camera to the tower, and it was exactly as awesome as I was hoping it'd be. So limitations, I'm going to talk more about that later. Here's something which is still not out, and it's work in progress on a bigger scale. It's Remedy not only does original work, but we nowadays have started collaborating with Smilegate company, and their Crossfire franchise is promising with their 650 million registered users. So they came to us and asked to make a story for their franchise, and that work is now in progress. But there is this teaser trailer out, so let's take a look. Those images are me on location looking for references and then doing the cinematics together with the cast. So they've been around for, 13 years or so, and it's rather huge in Asia, although not very famous here in the West, but things are hopefully changing. But anyway, very interesting project and a very nice collaboration, and let's see how it turns out when eventually things start rolling out. 2020 has been mentioned before as the year when things are going to happen. Then very briefly about Remedy, so long history, lots of things, and now Control seems to be gaining pretty much good reception, especially on the critics side. So there's 8 categories for Game Awards and 6 in Titanium Awards. We don't know how it's going to turn out. I think it's next week when the Game Awards are going to be selected, but there's already Critics' Choice Award for Control, and then the long history. And then this is the amount of people. So we were rather tightly packed group in the old days and always kind of half the size of the similar companies or even third the size, because maybe we thought that with the demo scene background and kind of very tight collaboration and always concentrating on the tools, which nowadays you have Unities and Unreals and all this, but there was always Max Payne or later Alan Wake and now Northlight technology, so proprietary technology for Remedy, and concentrating on the tools is usually at least half of the work done. So it's still our own tool chain with Remedy, but there is a new project called Vanguard also, which is more Unreal heavy. Anyway, notably, now that there's more projects, company went to IPO and used a lot of that excess money then to grow more. And first there was 2 projects, Control and this Operation Frost, and then the technology, the Northlight. But now there's actually even more of those projects, some of them still under wraps, and there's 250 people or so, but still, if I may plug shamelessly, go check the website, there's always hiring. There's 30 nationalities already, so. Okay, but let's get to the meat. I tried to think about, in a short way, what is the Remedy way and what has been the driving theme in art or storytelling or in game making. And I think it's something like this. So there's stuff that we are inspired by, and it's always nicer to be doing something, if you're in control of your own destiny, that you are excited about, and then you get to work on it. That kind of a stuff, because then it's bound to be better. And there's been a lot of other mediums which have been very inspiring to us. And then what happens is the games are very different medium than film, for example, obviously. The other one is very passive. You are receiving something which already somebody has decided, and the other one is very active. You are the protagonist, if you will. So that's a so fundamental difference that much like you don't usually take a book and take one page and just make a film scene after that. Rather, you think about film as a medium and you start thinking about the themes and the characters, and you just don't tell, you mostly show, or you use music and other mediums. So then it's a good movie. So now that's been sort of driving force, is to think about what those things we like in essence are, what is the core theme, and then trying to think how that is working in an interactive medium where people are experiencing it themselves. For example, bullet time is an example where time slows down, and one of the first implementations of bullet time, we were looking at the movies, and slow motion came along. So we tried it on the game, we switched it on every time there were enemies, and it became the most annoying thing ever, because you wanted to fight them and everything slowed down, and you wanted to kill the enemies quickly, because only when you had killed the last one, the time sped up again. And I remember running in the levels and trying to hunt all the enemies, really frustrated because time was so slow. But it feels obvious now that of course you want to give that to the player, but it wasn't very obvious then, and there was a lot of growing and thinking how this medium works, games medium. Limitations are a blessing, because you can't do everything. You don't have endless time, endless money. So trying to use people's imagination to work in favor of you. Then sometimes you can't avoid something. You need to commit. And often it's good if you do it really well. So trying to yin and yang your way around designing games, deciding what to leave out and what to do really well. And then, because it's a story-driven game, and above all game, so it has to feel good to play and experience, but it also has to, or it can, while doing that, tell a story on every possible level. Its environment, the music, the actors, if there's some, everything about can be a story. So I tried to pick a few examples along the way which sort of show this approach, or have been a revelation for me or the company on the journey that this is how you do one of these things. So for example, with Max Payne, the bullet time and the inspiration, and then defining the medium, how to do something which is cool on a movie and how to rethink it and make it equally cool or even cooler in a game. Or how very difficult problem, we went to do a psychological thriller, and that's an extremely problematic style base, because in games you usually, for example, want to see your enemies, or you're very frustrated if you're just killed, and usually you just quit the game. But in a psychological movie, you rarely see the enemy. For example, in Aliens, or Alien, you mostly just wait. And trying to think about how to balance that and how to communicate and have that spirit carry over was extremely difficult. Quantum Break took quite a bold leaps in cross-media and character tech, and this is an example of something where we had to commit and let's do character technology to end all character technologies and try to do as good real-time characters as we possibly can. And then Control, it's a massive story of its own, but I'll take a very small portion and talk a little bit about the oldest house, which is definitely a character in a game, the entire environment where the game happens. So, Max Payne. Well, I already spoke about the bullet time, and this pretty much defined Remedy as a company. As we went along, we were thinking how to make a game and how to be inspired, and we were inspired by two things: a Hong Kong action movie, and then the writer Sam Lake brought in, like he was really a big fan of kind of film noir, hard-boiled detective stories, so they made this sort of, I don't know if it's unholy or holy marriage. And definitely watched all the B-police action movies and find locations, so a construction site or back alleys or rooftops or whatever. And then the story, often people started just playing it from It Seemed, which was exactly what we were hoping for. They started playing it because of the, oh, I want to do slow motion dives and shoot with the double Uzi in akimbo, which you want to do, of course. But then they stayed for the story, and afterwards where they were like, whoa, I was actually rather engaged. And whenever, that's one of the key things again, like in a movie, it's rather boring if you don't care about the characters. And we tried very hard to care, and we did care for Max ourselves, and it was 7 years of love with that guy. But it was really interesting how team immediately knew what Max, or it was almost like Max told us what to do rather than us anymore commanding the character when we were doing Max Payne 2. It was so obvious how to go forward. And it took only 18 months compared to the 4 years that had been taken before. What's this? Oh yes. This is one of those sort of let's understand what the medium means moments. So, and avoiding problems. We didn't have, and how limitations are your blessing. So Max Payne was doing the story with these graphic novel screens, by the way, and down there it's a stop button, so it's actually a video controller. So there's quite a few mediums here. It's a game which plays a graphic novel with the video controllers, but it was a long journey, and this was the correct way to do it. At the beginning we never had the sound, and then you just click through them like you would a comic book. And then people hear the voices in their heads, they read the story, and that works. But if you start playing sound, people start listening, and it becomes a given medium, a movie, although it may look like a comic or graphic novel. So actually the correct controller is a video player. And there was a moment when it was really broken, because it was sort of mixture of the two. You were hearing the voices, but you had to click every screen. So first of all, saving a lot of energy, not doing the 3D, having just one or two guys working on the graphic novel, everybody loving them, and nobody ever came afterwards saying that you guys were saving money. It was quite the opposite, because of the style and the strong engagement, where you could just follow or fall into the story and sort of implying and not doing a very crappy 3D animation, rather doing an imagination inspiring images where you fill the gaps, and then it mostly is in your head. You're actually doing a better delivery. So massive save, and then turning the limitation into a victory, and then thinking what your medium is. Then this is me in Remedy's basement, trying to look for the old stuff. This is actually from Game Informer game to do a story, and I took a clip from there. This is Sam Lake's mother, which is the main villain. So go figure. But so there's nothing holy, even though often you try to impress your peers and you would like to do really cool 3D model or whatever and animate it. But we were thinking that we're here to tell the story, and whatever means necessary we do it. So we asked, then there was barely no money. We were kind of upcoming company, and game industry was upcoming as well. So we asked friends and family to join, and let's do photographs, and we only need the references, and they will be painted over anyway, so just come over here and we'll do a little bit of fun. And it worked. But there's, in a way, whatever it takes, and often going back to the source. So if there's a human, like here, only human is the best person to convey emotions and feelings. So rather than drawing them from scratch, which may have been tempting for any artist who is kind of like, I don't use photographs, I paint. But it would have been a foolish thing to do, and that's also been sort of a underlying theme, I think, with Remedy's work, is that this is the main thing which we're doing, the game and delivering the story, and we save feet and save work wherever we can, and then if it's justified by the story, then that's just fine, whatever it takes. Cheap or expensive or whatever, but always consider your medium. So Max Payne 2 was continuation of the same vein, mostly, so no major alterations there, except much more higher production values. Then years go by, and Alan Wake comes along, and we set out very ambitiously, like after we sold Max Payne to Take-Two and Rockstar, there was maybe even a little too much money in the bank, in a way that the ambition grew, and limitations are your friend. And sometimes if there's too much, freedom, and nothing forces you to decide that this is the framework, then that's really awkward situation for actually a designer, because anything goes this way or that way or everywhere. There's no limit. So embrace the tight budget and be creative, because that's the only forcing factor. You easily end up going that other path and somehow not doing the bold enough cuts if there's no limits. So embracing the limitations. And for a while, I think there were a little bit of, journey that were taken not so, it wasn't necessary to take all those steps which we took for Alan Wake, but it really was creating a very large open world tech and moving completely new way and rethinking and being very ambitious about what does it mean to be a psychological thriller, which we all loved, and we loved Twin Peaks, and we wanted to make that kind of a game, whatever it is. And whereas, for example, then the medium was interesting because there's a writer called Alan Wake who writes, and his writings turn into reality in the game world. But the whole show is presented as a TV show, because that was far more appealing to us, in a way that we were doing DVD box sets. Everybody was binge watching different shows. Then nowadays you maybe Netflix, but then you were doing it with the DVD boxes. So that kind of an experience, and it suited much better a game which is much longer than the Max Payne 3-act type of a movie where you kind of introduce the character and then there's the bad moments, and then through those hardships they eventually win. And like classic American 3-act movie structure was sort of undercurrent of Max Payne. This was a TV show with much more different, more elaborate steps on the way. Let's see. I may have to talk.
One of the most anticipated titles of 2010,
keep this a little
Alan Wake
lower
will set
now.
the bar in cinematic story-driven action. Alan Wake aims to create a unique thriller experience. The game seamlessly blends fierce cinematic action with a gripping storyline where things can happen unexpectedly at any time. In order to create the game's unique action, Remedy's goal was to integrate the themes of light and darkness into the combat. The dark presence that threatens Wake is possessing the local townsfolk, and Wake's shadowy enemies seem invincible under the cover of darkness. Before the player can fight them, he first needs to burn away the darkness with light. The use of light as a gameplay element is integrated tightly into the action elements of the game. A handheld flare gives you a momentary safe haven. Flashlights and batteries become an important resource, and even military-grade searchlights can become the key to survival. The gameplay provides variety, with a multitude of enemies, vehicles, poltergeists, and other threats. As the dark presence grows in power, the player will never know what to trust, as even the most innocent, inanimate object can come to life and turn into a threat. In addition to flashlights and weapons, the player will have to cleverly use the environment in order to survive. The action is paced with environmental puzzles, collectibles, and story-driven content.
I'm Barry Wheeler, his agent.
This is where the game's supporting cast comes into play. Like Remedy's Max Payne games, Alan Wake is thick with pop culture references. Among others, Remedy lists Stephen King, Lost, and Twin Peaks as their influences. The game creates a suspenseful, unique thriller experience only seen to date in film and TV, with the kind of chilling atmosphere, powerful narrative, twists, and cliffhangers that modern audiences have come to expect. The game's lead character, Alan Wake, is a best-selling writer suffering from a writer's block. While vacationing in the idyllic small town of Bright Falls, Wake finds himself trapped in a nightmare. His wife Alice goes missing, and he keeps finding pages from a book he can't even remember writing, and the words are coming true before his eyes. Remedy is also setting the bar high with their soundtrack. The custom-composed cinematic score is combined with the use of licensed songs to create a strong atmosphere. Alan Wake is by far the biggest single-player experience that Remedy has created, and to ensure that every player is provided with an optimal gameplay experience, the game constantly monitors the player's progress and adjusts the difficulty on the fly, maintaining a sweet spot that is suitably challenging. After years of development, the result is a heart-pounding single-player thrill ride that raises the bar in storytelling with a wealth of suspense, twists, and cliffhangers.
Okay, I gave the guy the chance to talk. Of course, this was something we got back in the day. My favorite was still that it was a heart pounding, and on that moment the guy was being hit. But the implying and atmosphere, again trying to put people's imagination to work for you. Insomnia, for example, anything from that director is awesome. But you have to always have a real life base, or the supernatural, reminder, not fantasy. Supernatural is different. In Alan Wake, the idea was always that it must be something which you still think that it may be happening within your head. As a psychological thriller, you're not quite sure if you're turning crazy or if the world is turning crazy. Let's go a bit forward. running a bit low on time, there were two things which led to then Quantum Break, or were inspired, or let's say not inspired. They were important while setting off to do Quantum Break. One of them was that the facial performance and character performance was really difficult still at 2009 and 10, and it was really hard to buy anything that from the outside which would solve that, so we went to a crazy idea that we need to do this on our own. And then there was this episode within the multimedia of Alan Wake, which was in that world, and often in Remedy games there's TV shows which are reflecting the game world and telling the story. So there was this one episode called Quantum Suicide, which then sort of inspired the next project, which was Quantum Break. And foolishly maybe, game graphics and live action was set to put on side by side, which is rather kind of tall order, because if your character text sucks next to the Hollywood cast, that's really awkward. And real people show if there's anything missing in the character tech. So let's watch this still. Oh, sorry, going too fast. So, yeah.
Hey guys, I'm Sean Ashmore, and this is Quantum Break. Quantum Break is an epic story. It's a story about a world in crisis, and it's really a story about destiny. It's exciting as an actor to be a part of a game that has a focus on character and performance. Not only do you do the character preparation and study, you also have to be completely digitally scanned and placed into a video game. Having a virtual body, essentially, is completely foreign sort of technique for me. I think it's pushing my boundaries. Where is he? Where's my brother? Working with the other actors has been really cool. We've just started talking about these relationships. We've just started delving into who these characters are and how they'll interact. The game is going to influence the show and vice versa.
No.
I think it's a really unique way of storytelling that's going to bring the game player deeper into the characters.
So, a long journey to create a character technology, and I'm gonna go this really fast because this is a massive rabbit hole. But this, just to prove in a way the point of like, when you commit to something, then it's a big thing to commit to something, and then you might find that the rabbit hole is pretty big. By this time, years had gone by, and we've developed kind of an approach like how we want to do with the characters. So the story dictates that let's do a mood board character like this. Maybe Joaquin Phoenix has the right flavor, but actually that guy may have even better flavor because he kind of looks like our main cast character, and then it could be his brother, but has that manic quality. And okay, if we make him, what would he look like? How his outfits work, and let's see different types of things which are not problematic in a game, but still are iconic, and do the whole kind of dressing. We need super high resolution kind of scans if we want to reference the real actors in their outfits. So let's create a system with a few dozens of cameras and use photogrammetry and create millions of polygons. Then you need to avoid all the oiliness of the skin, so you need to use a variety of polarization fields to get rid of all the oiliness, to get the actual texture color. and then you get a very high resolution character, but you can't use that because it's too high res, but you want the wrinkle maps because human faces are moving really weirdly, and you actually understand that there is teeth, and if the teeth are wrong, there's massive gaps here, and if you're smiling, you look really weird, so you need to take dental thing from your cast. So that's Dominic Monaghan's teeth, and different kinds of references, how the neck behaves is really important for a human, and how you open your mouth and how different stretching happens, and then you have the high res, and then you have the low res, and you need to bake them together to be able to run it in a game. And then you get the final result, which is actually pretty good. And you need to do the body and find a good new T-pose where you get all the body references as well, and all the, as you would. And here you get the wrinkle maps and the shapes. And then you finally may have a high resolution base. By the way, that's Max Payne 1 reference photography, and one of the level designers, and I'm photographing. So quite far. Body animation, well, you need to do a lot of different technologies to compensate all this, but that's pretty commonplace these days, but wasn't maybe 5 years ago. And then the hardest part in computer graphics. And this is the face technology, which goes wrong in many cases, even in film. So you need to, first of all, stabilize and do the tracking. You need to do the wrinkle maps and teach the face how to behave. You need to light the characters very carefully and create the technology that will help you to put it on timeline. And then later, when you do it a little bit longer, you create a few SIGGRAPH papers and realize that there's two laborers. So you want to use deep learning to, well, it's going a bit weirdly. Let's see if there's anything here. All right. Apologies. Something weird happened there. Let's go a bit further. So there were two SIGGRAPH papers related to deep learning and how human voice, for example, and face tracking can be deep learned because it's way too laborious to do all of it on its own. And this is actually, for example, this version is coming from, nobody's done any hand labor.
We'll do that. You have to go in and out
we have taught
all the ammo and
deep learning to listen to the voice and produce the lip movement and also the facial gestures from the deep learning system. But then briefly control. Luckily I'm the last person here, so I may have a little more time for Q&A. This is going to be pretty close to full hour. About control then, a couple of credits though. Sam is still there, and together with Mikael, they did the concept. And Miksu actually then suggested, he's a clever man as well, that how about using brutalism on the architecture. And Janne, the art director, and especially the world design director, whom I got his material from, Stuart, then started working on that. And I did very little, or practically zero, but I'm very humbled by their work and how they've, let's say, all the good stuff that Remedy ever did is sort of coming together in this. So how to do, let's watch this, and
Peggy 18.
I'll let someone else talk for a while.
August 4th, 1964. Bureau agents discover the oldest house investigating an altered world event case in the New York City subway tunnels. It's a place of power, From the outside, it looks like an ordinary building, a brutalist skyscraper. But inside, it breaks the laws of our reality, unstable, mad, and shifting. There are rooms in the building where other dimensions leak in. We call these rooms thresholds. There is a connection between our minds and the unknown, often hostile forces intruding on our world. These forces gravitate toward everyday objects, a gun, a television, a house with a reputation of being haunted. So somehow, we affect these events. We're holding the key, but we don't have a clue on how to use it. We're dealing with dangerous, unknown forces here. What's the cause and what's the effect? Are we the starting point, or just a necessary evil in this? We're on a mission to find answers to these questions. Or die trying. This is Zachariah Trench, the director of the Federal Bureau of Control.
Control was a project done surprisingly fast, so not the usual 7 years, more like 3, and it was, a lot of it came like, let's do all the good stuff we've done over the years. For example, asking James McCaffrey to do a cameo, the guy who played Max Payne's voice and was also back in the day momentarily a Max Payne. He was doing the bureau director's voice. And I would have hoped that I would have been so smart and I wasn't part of this chain of creativity, but I couldn't imagine that I would have been able to do anything better than this, although I have my background also in architecture. Stuart MacDonald, who's basically the production designer or world design director as he is called, did all the heavy lifting, and his background is Grand Theft Auto, but also then on Remedy and architectural, and he has background in architecture and has designed real buildings like me. So he got to do all this good stuff. And this was one of his early concepts, and monolithic skyscraper in New York, and incidentally there is one. It's called J33 Thomas, and it's a brutalist building which was built to sustain a nuclear attack, and it has basically no windows, and it's really crazy. And it's a sort of a telephone exchange center, so it has to work at any situation, and it's been sometimes seen elsewhere in pop culture as a kind of a, for example, Mr. Robot, sinister data center. And again, very Remedy approach. Let's be smart. Let's think about real world. This thing is new weird. So how every day can carry supernatural or paranatural elements, and the brutalism was so clever choice because here's, for example, Le Corbusier building Unité d'Habitation in Marseille. I've been there, and my home in Finland, by the way, is inspired by this, so I love this building. But it was in the 30s, 50s meant to be the democratic material of the everyman, and béton brut, the concrete, which is basically bare, is honest and genuine. Obviously later, and here of course, especially in the eastern, let's say the communist Soviet Union may have taken it sometimes maybe too seriously, that led to a lot of concrete. So it doesn't always associate itself with pleasantness, but it can be beautiful. And here's other buildings like, for example, the J. Edgar Hoover building, or the Boston City Hall, which is a really awesome place. And then how it's been in pop culture, often depicted as, for example, in Blade Runner or Clockwork Orange and Robocop, the OCP headquarters. So it basically is a perfect setting where then, in the language of the game and when talking to the player and telling the story, you can juxtapose these two things. So anything about the agency, which fights the weirdness in a way, out of our regular people's eyes. In Secret, Federal Bureau of Control, they represent order and mundane, so as boring in a way as possible, concrete. It's a bureaucratic and it's stable, and then it's opposed by the threat of the game, which is called the hiss. And these elements and colors are then very easily readable against this reference. And it's new weird, so it kind of lives and breathes, and you don't even know how old the building really is, or if it's a building at all. It just looks like a building. So once you're in, it's much bigger inside than outside. It's a gateway to different levels of being and reality. So again, this being grounded in the mundane then makes it more believable and readable. And there's a lot of stories there, like if you look closely there, it says, for example, here the survey team A was vanished or something like that, and was never to be found. So the building shifts and you may get lost to this world, and it's dangerous, but it's more like an ocean that it doesn't care. It maybe doesn't even know if people are living in it or if there's anyone inside. And then how the mundane and the supernatural sort of meet, that if the building keeps shifting and the water cooler guy comes and maybe it's shifted a little bit and you can't reach, but you work your day in the office. And in many ways this is again sort of bureaucratic idea. And then it allows you to clean the hiss and progress in the game and turn the chaos to mundane. So in many ways, I'm just about to finish, so we can have a few questions then. I think this ticks all the boxes which I ever think that Remedy was or has been in the 25 years. It's really good rendering performance. Lighting looks awesome on concrete. You can easily read enemies in the background or any alterations. It lives. It can be dynamic because it's single material. It's very action friendly because you see if it's been altered, and if you kill or break or do stuff, you can see your pathway and feel like I've accomplished something here. It's iconic, it's clever, it has references to all places. It's very stylish and immediately recognizable, which is rather hard because so many people are working on games and a lot of the stuff is coming out. So you try to find something which looks like you. And then it houses, no pun intended, houses many stories, and you can imagine more of them, and it allows continuation. So again, let's see where I started off. So inspired by the mediums is true. The limitations were turned to blessing. Something is committed, like let's go all the way in the brutalism and see what it means and how we can use it as an interactive game medium. And it's an architecture, so is it, and if it serves the story like in this one, or actually even makes the story and becomes a character of its own right, then you're kind of on the right path because you're telling a story and everything is about that while being a game. That's about it.